So today we're here to discuss the Labyrinth Cup. We are joined by some amazing battlers and Tati. Just kidding. We're joined by some amazing battlers. Some of them you have seen in the Silph All-Star Invitational, and I think everybody who watches Twitch, who watches GBL, should know Azaray. I think he was also the first ever Scottish elite.
Correct.
Isn't it right? Yes.
And
Boom.
ace.
And ace. There you go. Guys, I'm going to go one by one so that you can have a quick introduction about yourselves. Let's start with Jurunja. Can you give us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jurunja. I've been around in Silph since Boulder Cup has started, and my aspirations have been for shooting higher and higher. I'm trying to go for the Continental this time around. Every time we've come to regionals, I'm just always right under the cut. So this season, I'm really trying hard to represent NA going into the Silph Worlds, but we'll see if I can get there. Currently rank 11 on the leaderboards before this Labyrinth Cup starts off. And so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing with this cup. So we'll save that for a little bit. And other than that, GBL, rank 24, 3200s right now. Haven't really played that much compared to other seasons. I'm like half the amount of battles other people's on GBL are. But I just try to play it and enjoy it when I can. Other than that, that's all from me.
All right. Next up, let's go with VaNNiii.
So hello everyone, I'm VaNNiii from Spain. I'm here to talk about the Silph Labyrinth Cup and obviously about Silph. I'm really excited to be here and to be part of this meeting. And about Silph, I've been playing since Season 1 started. Okay, and my experiences as Jurunja has been going high and high. And to be honest, I expect to reach Continentals this year. And European Continentals, okay, and make it to the top 8. And I'm really glad I'm playing with a lot of people and getting to know a lot of people this season. And with the recent All-Star event, to be honest, Silph is doing things really well. And I can say we can expect a lot from factions and this new team competition. So I just want everyone to keep playing Silph. And about GBL, I would love GBL to be more like Silph in the theme of Show 6 and Pick 3. I guess that's really hard at this moment since Niantic is not paying so much attention to PvP, but we will see.
All right. Azaray, your turn.
My turn. So like you said, I've been playing Silph since Season 1 as well, like most people here. I was the first in Scotland to reach Ace and Elite in the second season. I'm currently ranked 69, 59, somewhere there in Silph, and second in the UK. I also do a lot of GBL. I generally don't try to reach the very, very tops because I can't be bothered with the queue times. At least that's the excuse I'll say, because I'm not that amazing to reach 34, 3500s. But I do stream as well, my Twitch, my GBL and Silph stuff. But I'm also really looking forward to this meta. I think this is the first really interesting wow kind of meta that we've had from Silph in a long time. So looking forward to see what kind of teams people will build.
All right. Last but not least, and the only member who's always been with us from the start, Tati.
I thought you said in the beginning that I was the least. Yeah, but anyway, Finnish battler, streamer as well on Twitch, and they have been in the PvP scene all the way from Silph Season 1, at the beginning of it. I was also the first battler in Finland to get to Elite, and also right now I am the top-ranked Finnish player in the Silph rankings, and also probably in GBL as well. Right now I think I am somewhere. I am ace in the Silph this season, somewhere close to rank 50 or something. I was at 23 at one point, and in GBL I am also a legend. And a couple of days ago I was it rank 18 or something in the GBL leaderboard. So been doing pretty well for a while now, and looking also forward to the Labyrinth meta. Looks really unique and a little bit different that Silph has been putting out lately. So really looking forward to it.
All right, that is everybody. At least that is everybody who will be first discussing the meta. We are just going to be joined a bit later by Spleen Legion. So about this meta, what makes it interesting is the fact that, as you can see it on screen, is that this big thing that's called unique typing, which means that you cannot have repeated typings within your team. So you need to find a way to have coverage for your weaknesses, which won't necessarily be straightforward. So you have to do your homework to make sure that that your team is balanced. What is also especially to note is I'm really loving the bans that Silph put out this time around. Banning Azu, Deoxys, Cresselia, Hypno, and especially this Shadow Machamp is very good for this meta personally, because I recently played a format where we had to build a team with a partner, unique typing again, and Shadow Machamp was so good in that meta. It's just, you just definitely needed to ban it, and I'm really glad they did. Guys, what are your initial thoughts regarding this, other than that it's amazing?
You can go. You can go first.
No. You after you.
All right. All right. So basically, the first thing that came to my mind was that a lot of the monotype fighters and also some other counter users, like the top counter users, are banned. So normal types are gonna have fun, which means if normal types are gonna have fun, Vigoroth is gonna have fun. So that's kind of my first thoughts when I saw this.
All right, Azaray, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was actually that's a very fair comment, and that's obviously why so many normal types are in the top of the PvP poke rankings. But what I was gonna say is I think they should have banned more Pokemon like Skarmory. I feel Skarmory is a kind of obvious choice, especially if you don't have a good Mandibuzz like myself, like still waiting for that rank 1 to power up that you'll never get. But I feel some Pokemon are going to be very, very common. And I was even thinking maybe they could have even banned Vigoroth as well, just to make the teams more diverse. Even though the teams are going to be diverse because of the meta, I feel 90% of teams will have Vigoroth and like 80 will have Skarmory, in my opinion.
Yeah, Skarmory is pretty interesting, but I think the reason why it was not banned is because Charmers exist and you need something to deal with the Charmers. Also, it's not really OP in the essence that, yes, you have, yes, it is really good, but if it goes up against a Vigoroth, it's still like a 50-50 matchup. And I think a lot of the Pokemon that are going to show up, at least in the top 10 rank right about now in PvP, can do pretty well against the Skarmory that exists. Any thoughts on Skarmory, guys? Before we quickly...
Yeah.
Go on.
I think that if they didn't ban Skarmory here, every Steelmon would be weak to fighters. Okay, so maybe we could go into kind of an RPS meta. So leaving Skarmory is a good decision in that sense. Okay, that's my opinion on Skarmory.
Yeah, so for Skarmory here, you do have some checks and balances to it. You still have VaNNiii. You can do bubbles, reduce the damage that Skarmory is going to try to do. You can throw a surprise Ice Beam, make it play a guessing game with shields. Or if you're feeling really crafty, you can bring a Shadow Zapdos and just completely stomp out all the other flying types in this meta. But at the same time, you're also going to be kind of frail. So that's a trade-off right there.
Yeah, and people also tend to ignore the existence of normal Stunfisk.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is going to do really well, I think, in this meta. It can go toe-to-toe with the Vigoroth Save Swap too. All right, I'm gonna now switch to my PvPoke screen, and we're going to, let's say, what we usually do is we look at the top 6 or 7 Pokemon and discuss a little bit about them. Basically, what functions they're going to be used for and how good they can be. I have excluded Lickitung from the discussion because you need an XL Lickitung, and if you have an XL Lickitung, it's highly likely that you've been spoofing. Or you have been extremely lucky in the egg hatches, because it is difficult to have. First up, let's start out with Diggersby XL. I think this is a little bit more easier to achieve, and I think most people should have access to an XL Diggersby. It is a Pokemon. I think you can definitely use it as an extra shield and still do some damage to the other opponent Pokemon. The key functions of Diggersby is going to be, let's say, it's going to be your anti-tank, anti-bug, anti-grass in a way, because it has Fire Punch, but it still has a grass coverage. What are your initial thoughts on XL Diggersby? Do we need an XL Diggersby, or are we okay with a normal one?
I think it was PvP Steve that actually made a video just for that question, basically. And I thought he mentioned that you can very well run also level 41. It does mostly the same stuff that the XL level 50 does, but it has some nuances. Like was it? I think it was Toxicroak and Jelly said for some that are different between those level 50 and level 40 and level 50 ones. But it mostly does the same thing, wins the same stuff and loses to the same stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have XL one.
But I guess it's about how much it loses by and how much it wins by. That's going to be the difference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And of course, the level 51 has more stats, so it in the vacuum it is of course better, but in matchup terms, it isn't that huge of a difference.
And in this meta, I think it's also important to look at the Pokemon in a different perspective. You cannot look at a Pokemon and say this is going to beat X Pokemon. You need to look at what typings are this Pokemon going to be weak to and what it can cover, because that's essentially how Labyrinth Cup is supposed to be built. For example, when you look at Diggersby, you can say that, okay, it loses to grass, water, ice, flying, and fighting, for instance. And what it can pick up wins is basically steel, rock, electric, bug. It can beat some fairies and also poison typing. So it's how you know the positives of this and the negatives of this, and also exception matchups in exceptional losses and exceptional wins in its let's say in its kitty. One example or a few examples for Diggersby's exceptional wins are going to against, let's say, it is weak to fighting because it's a normal type, but it can pick up, let's say, Escavalier and Lucario. Lucario is very close, but Escavalier Fire Punches is going to be double super effective against it, and you can use Diggersby to do quite a bit of damage. Also, what is funny is that it's supposed to lose quite a bit to flyers, but it picks up Skarmory. And that's only because of the existence of Fire Punch and the spamminess of Diggersby. Any, I don't know, any other thoughts on Diggersby, essentially? Would you guys run it if you had the chance to?
I don't have one, so that's a no.
If you had the chance to.
Yeah, I think I have like a rank 5, but I only have like 100 XL. I don't know if that would be as good or maybe even better than a level 40, like a level 40 rank 1, just like power up to 1400. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, it's very interesting because, like you said, it does have a lot of exceptions. And actually, just the when I was talking earlier, I just realized my team's kind of weak to Diggersby, so I probably won't be winning every single game like I was saying before the call.
Yeah, and also pretty interesting to note is that you will probably see Charmers and Vigoroth in this meta. And I know that Vigoroth can beat Wigglytuff if your Wigglytuff is a high stat product one in the Zero Shields. The same goes to Diggersby Xl. You need let's say you need to reach the charm breakpoint so that you can feint down the Diggersby. The same as Vigoroth. So it would be advisable if you're going to run a charmer to make sure that it has this breakpoint.
Do you know what that
other
breakpoint?
thoughts?
Do you know what
we can look
exactly that breakpoint is?
Yeah, we can look it up.
It was a moderately high attack one, if I remember correctly, from the Jungle Cup.
Exactly. Let's say if you have high stat product here and a high one here, then
this is with Diggersby, right?
No, this is with Vigoroth.
Okay.
You want one with? Yeah, sorry.
No. I thought we were talking about Diggersby. My bad.
Yeah. No. It's, I messed up. Level 50. I'm not gonna go best buddy. So you can see the high stat product one. It loses to Diggersby. If you go default settings, you'll pull it up in the zeros. If not, you lose. So one more thing. There. So you need to get to the extra breakpoint to pick up this matchup if the Diggersby goes. It's one of these things. I think it's in the Zero Shields, but I'm not able to remember the exact sim that I made. But yeah.
That's pretty crazy. The Diggersby doesn't even need to bait. You can just go straight EQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah, this is pretty close even in the end anyway. Oh yeah. Diggersby is such a tank, and it is going to be a problem if you don't have really, really good checks for it. And there are not a lot of really, really good checks for it, except let's say if you're running grass or ice types. If you, for example, if you're running something like a Venusaur, it's not bulky enough to not shield the Diggersby. Because yes, Earthquake hurts, and so does Fire Punch.
Also, one thing that came to mind from the Diggersby was that a lot of people have had success in practice tournaments with Diggersby, Alolan Ninetales core. So that should be pretty good. Because Alolan Ninetales can cover those basically grass types. So like pure water types are still going to be a lot of trouble for that core. But against pretty much anything else, that core seems to do very well enough and has gotten pretty good results in a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, I think again this cup is going to be to finding a core few Pokemon, core 3, and build around this core 3 based on functionalities you need. All right. Any other comments on Diggersby, Jurunja, or VaNNiii? Anything from your side?
Well, I think if anyone can build a Diggersby, I will try it this week, for example. You can get a lot of advantage from Diggersby, since probably one hard check could be Politoed, and with the Weather Ball rework, Politoed could be really in the meta, I think, and maybe if Diggersby gets into the meta, that means Politoed could go in as a check or as a hard counter. But apart from Politoed and other common waters typing, I don't see like Diggersby being a bad pick.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. The chat is asking what your thoughts on the double counter strat, which would be a Vigo with Toxicroak.
That would actually be really scary.
Yeah, I think that's very solid. I think that's very solid.
Yeah, it is pretty solid.
Or even like a Hitmontop if you want the poison type for Venusaur in the back.
Yeah, why not? There are still other grasses than Venusaur, but Venusaur is very good.
Yeah.
Exactly. what could also be interesting is that Politoed is going to have a neutral matchup against both of them. It's not going to lose per se, and also this core is going to have a lot of problem with the Ufisk, because Ufisk is also going to do a lot of damage to both of them, and Toxicroak just straight up loses really badly. Yeah, but it is going to be a strong core, and it depends on how you guys build your team around these two Pokemon. That's what's going to be important. And for example, the core that what do you call that Tati just said, the Diggersby Alola Ninetales core, that is also going to do really well against this one. Because
not only
without
that,
a
you also
shield,
have Ghost to worry about. You have like Jellicent to worry about. You have Alola Marowak to worry about. Because Alola Marowak can get spammy with the Bone Club, but you're kind of just in a rock, paper, scissors game against predicting baits with the Vigoroth, though. Because if they throw the Bulldoze, you lose. If you successfully shield the Bulldozes, then you can win. But it's a toss-up on that one.
Exactly. And one of the reasons double counter worked really well in the Sunrise Cup was because you had Obstagoon that you could pick with it, and it covers the ghost types. And right about now, you cannot do that with Toxicroak, unfortunately. All right, on to the next Pokemon, the Pokemon that everybody keeps talking about and that keeps showing up in every meta, Vigoroth. All right, who wants to talk about Vigoroth? Because I will take a backseat for this one.
Vigoroth, man. You have so many things it can cover. And with fighting types being out, all the main fighting types being out, Medicham, Shadow Machamp, things that can really put a knock into Vigoroth, you're looking at Vigoroth coasting through this meta. So if you do not have answers to Vigoroth, then your team overall is going to be in trouble, because that Vigoroth is going to be a safe swap against you every single time if you do not have hard checks to it.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would also like to add is please try to have a good IV Vigoroth, because you can see this is 78%. If you have a good IV one, that goes to 82%. That is 4% increase. That's quite a bit of Pokemon that you pick up with a good IV.
That number gets even crazier if you put like 2 counters in energy.
Oh yeah.
And especially if you put 2 shields, then it gets even more crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 91% if you have 2 counters in. I think some of the few losses are going to be Drifblim. It's going to be at the top.
Yeah.
I was generally thinking about.
Yeah, a lot of.
Go on.
Go on.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking that a lot of teams are going to have Drifblim just because of Vigoroth, basically.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Azaray?
I was gonna say that. I was gonna say I was generally thinking of using Drifblim just for Toxicroak, because not Toxicroak, sorry, just for Vigoroth, and because those Shadow Balls, it hits pretty much everything for neutral, and yeah, it's a very I think Drifblim's kind of I feel underrated in this cup, because if everyone's going to use Vigoroth in their team, if they don't have the Diggersby, which I think will be most of the Silph community, maybe I'm assuming everyone's at my crappy casual farming level, but yeah, I think Drifblim is very solid, and yeah, I think if you can trap it with on the Vigoroth switch, you can basically like double Shadow Ball whatever comes after and get a huge shield and advantage from that. So
it's actually a very good point that a lot of the probably most of the normal type picks are going to be Diggersby and Vigoroth, and Drifblim destroys kind of both of them, and then they can't have another normal to eat those Shadow Balls, so yeah,
exactly,
it's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, unless they pick a Licky.
Nah, let's not.
Let's not go there.
Those don't exist.
Well, I do have 100 IV one. Okay. Some of the things that I want to talk about Vigoroth is, let's say, why Vigoroth is amazing is because if you look at the fighters that exist in the meta, it doesn't straight up lose to them. It is still going to be close matchups. I think even with even going up against a Toxicroak, you're going to make the Toxicroak of course, he has the option to farm down, but you're going to get to 2 body slams, and that is something that's really insane for Vigoroth. And one of the other common counters that Vigoroth people use to counter Vigoroth is the Charmers. As you can see, there's quite a lot of Charmers running around here. And it's also going to be pretty close, especially if you have a little bit of an energy advantage. What Vigoroth gives for your team is going to be coverage against the Steel types, the Rock types, the Normal types, and the Dark types. And it hits pretty much everything else but neutral. And that's the problem with Vigoroth, and that's the good thing about Vigoroth. What is interesting is that you definitely need to bait a Reggie Steele to win that matchup. You cannot go straight body slam, you cannot go straight bulldoze. If the Reggie Steele picks up a flash cannon bait, you will lose that matchup. And that's something that is interesting to know. Yeah.
Also, kind of the same thing with the other Reggie as well, Regirock. Regirock can go straight focus blast in the zero shield, and with the bait, it can even pick up the one shield matchup as well.
Exactly. And another interesting thing about Vigoroth is that looking at its losses, it loses to flyers, it loses to ghost types, which is kind of weird because normal typings is supposed to do well against ghosts. It also loses to some of the bugs, as you can see, mostly because like, for example, Pinsir has access to close combat, and close combat will kill your Vigoroth and 2 more afterwards. And also Politoed. Politoed is one of the water types that do pretty well against the Vigoroth. I do have some IV dependent matchups. Those being Mandibuzz and Lucario. You need to have a high stat product Mandibuzz to pick up. Actually, no. You need to have a little bit of attack weighted Mandibuzz to make sure that you simultaneously KO. If you have a good stat product Mandibuzz, Vigoroth pulls off the win. So it's kind of iffy what you want your Mandibuzz to do in this meta. So, any other thoughts about this annoying monster that should have been banned?
I think I'm gonna run Drifblim. Yeah, I don't wanna deal with it because I think we saw a lot in the All-Star Cup that people would just switch in Vigoroth and it would just 2-shield and win switch. You know, even against things like Pelipper. I think the only hard check that it lost to was Drifblim in that meta. And I feel this cup is gonna be like the cup of the safe switch. I think it's gonna be more of a safe switch meta, and you almost want to like lose the lead because a lot of the Pokemon I think you want to have neutral matchups and try to get some sort of shield or energy advantage, so that way you don't fall into a RPS meta. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting because no 2 teams are going to be exactly similar. And you also might have to sacrifice some good mons because they have duo typings. Like, let's say, Tropius would be awesome, but then you lose your flyer typing. Venusaur is amazing, but then you might want another poison type in your lineup. Or something as easy as, what is it called? Wigglytuff is a good typing, but then you lose your Vigoroth. So it's going to be completely different teams and completely different ways to play. So team building is going to be the most important thing about this meta, I think. All right. Next mod is Zweilous. I don't know if there are big fans of Zweilous here, because I know there are a lot of people who love this Pokemon.
I'm
I
a
think it
fan
is
of
more.
I'm a fan of my own Zweilous because I have rank 1.
Wow.
Lucky.
Casual flex there.
Okay.
Have
How
to.
did you get a rank 1?
From a trade with the new friend.
Wow.
Oh man.
One of the luckiest trades I have ever gotten.
Yeah. One of the reasons why Zweilous is here is because, let's say, if there's going to be a fire water grass core or something like that, Zweilous is going to break through that core really easily. It is a dragon typing. It has also coverage against the ghosts that are going to be in this meta. And an important thing is that it can beat Mandibus. There's not a lot of Pokemon that can really threaten Mandibus as much, but Zweilous does a pretty good, pretty good against this. But I think one of the reasons why it's so high up in this meta, or at least in the rankings right about now, is the fact that it can pick up Lickitung XL. But once PvPoke starts updating usage based on the usage of mons, I think Zweilous might go a little bit down. But it is still a very neutral monster, which loses to our neutral monster that is Regirock. Any thoughts on Zweilous other than?
I'm really surprised it wins Skarmory, actually.
Yeah, that's actually due to the new Sky attack.
It should land with Dark Pulse.
That's fate dependent.
That's one of the matchups that's flipped with the Sky attack nerf.
Really?
Yeah, and I think if you have a good IV Skarmory, you can hit the Brave Bird and still pick up this win.
Okay.
So it's still. I have a rank 1 IV Skarmory, so I'm happy with this matchup. Casual flex.
Look at all these flexes.
The chat is asking your thoughts about the moveset that you should run for Alolan Ninetales. Charm, to go with Charm or to go with Powder Snow?
Honestly,
I think
I guess I'm gonna give the shout out to Hanksuli and please run Snow. Basically, it's just much more versatile that way.
Were you going to say the same thing, Azaray?
Yes, I was. Would you believe me? I think if you're using Charm, you're
DMPs today.
You're being very. Well, yeah, I feel if you're using Charm, you're basically going to be trapping yourself in many situations. Whereas if you're running Powder Snow, you can at least, even if you're in a losing situation, you can set up to lose, but for your next Pokemon to like farm down so you don't lose so badly, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I feel I feel that we're still going to see some Alolan Ninetales with Charm, just because it's probably, I think, the only tanky Charmer that can get moves off as quickly as it does with the Weather Ball. So yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Charm or Powder Snow, VaNNiii or Jurunja?
Yeah, I think that as Azaray told us, this cap is about safe switches and cover rates. So Alolan Ninetales could be a waste with Charm for me, because you can get easily like locked into some matchups against, for example, the Steels or the Poison types. So you definitely need the Powder Snow here. I mean, if you want to go into kind of a funny team of 6 and have safe switches and coverage against the maximum amount of types in the meta, you should go with Powder Snow.
Yeah, definitely. Going Charm is going to put your Alolan Ninetales in pretty much bad position sometimes. What's also interesting is Charm would lose to, let's say, Venusaur, because you're an Ice type, you lose your Ice typing, but you also, in essence, lose matchup against, let's say, Grass Poison. What I understood is that you can run Powder Snow. You have to run Powder Snow, but you can pick the move the secondary move that you want on it based on what your team needs. For example, you can go Dazzling Gleam or you can go Psyshock based on coverage that you need. Of course, you don't. Dazzling Gleam is going to hit all the other fairies neutral, but for me, I use Dazzling Gleam in GBL because it just hits. What is that annoying rabbit? I forgot that rabbit's name. Anyways.
Diggersby? Azu?
Azu, yes, that's the rabbit.
Only the most common Pokemon in GBL. It's easy to forget, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I've only ran Azu twice ever in the entire GBL thing.
Spicy.
Actually, here I kind of like Psyshock. Because the two dominant dark types are gonna be Zweilous and Mandibus, and you can still do Weather Balls to it with super effective damage. So you kind of don't need Dazzling Gleam to dark types. And with Psyshock, you can have just a little bit more coverage. Like you can hit neutral, for example, against the fire types, for example, which can be nice at some points.
Yeah,
it's important against Toxicroak.
Yeah,
Toxicroak, as well. Yeah, Toxicroak is a good one as well.
Yeah, shield down Toxicroak.
And Marowak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Marowak, yes. Yeah, definitely. Those are some pretty important things. I think, and also, essentially, one of the reasons why Diggersby is up here is because it also picks up Zweilous. Diggersby has options to bait you twice and then land one Earthquake. If in those scenarios, I do think that the benefit of the doubt goes to the Pokemon that can bait you twice and get a new cup. Next up is a mon that was really, really popular in GBL Season 1 and Season 2 before the advent of the G-Fisk. And since G-Fisk is not there, it's going to show up again, and that is Reggie Steele. Reggie Steele is bulky, Reggie Steele was spammy, and it's going to be in a really good place in this meta because it has pretty good coverage against, let's say, some of its weaknesses. For example, Vigoroth, it can hit with super effective Focus Blast. It can also hit, let's say, the water types with Focus Blast. It's also going to do a lot of damage, and it's not going to be super effective, but it's still going to be neutral. Will make you want to try and shield. This is one of the best closers the game has ever known, I think, personally. What are your thoughts on Reggie Steele? Would you bring one? I'm gonna do names this time because everybody's getting confused. All right, Azaray, you go first.
Oh, I get to go first this time. That's nice. Before Tati interrupts me, I think Reggie Steele is extremely good. I feel if you're running some sort of bait strategy that baits out their fighter or their like ground type, I think Reggie Steele can definitely close. But I feel this meta has a lot of checks for him. I feel, like I said, like we said, even Vigoroth is quite common. Although I'm pretty sure Vigoroth doesn't straight win. I think I remember you saying you have to get a bait to win. But there's also going to be Marowak is going to be probably the most common ghost and fire type, and there's also potentially Diggersby. And Toxicroak as well. I feel like Reggie Steele is going to do really well against a lot of the meta, but I feel a lot of the more common Pokemon are going to be being brought for Reggie Steele as well. So I feel it's going to be like 50-50 kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the main reasons why you would want Reggie Steele is to beat the Flyers, but unfortunately Mandibus can pick up this win in the one shield. But let's say, I guess this cup is going to be based on how you cover your weaknesses. For example, if you're really weak to dragons or grass types or let's say fairies in the essence, you can pick up a Reggie Steele and it's going to be solid in your team. And people are going to be afraid of it because they have been traumatized by it already in the season 1 and 2. Jurunja, any thoughts on Reggie? Steel, because
So-
there's going to be another Reggie.
So the good thing about Reggie Steele, if you already use your flying type and can't put Skarmory on your team, Reggie Steele might be your answer for what we just talked about, where you're trying to cover flying types, where you're trying to cover basically grass types, where you're trying to cover ice types, fairies, you name it. Reggie Steele has done all that stuff in the past. It still can do it, even though it does take a little longer to get to the moves that it used to love and spam a lot in GBL. But that's only if your flyer spot is not taken, because Skarmory does check a lot of the common threats in this meta. And it's like you said earlier, it's a value of trade-offs. What are you looking for on your team? What are you weak to? And basically molding your team based around those gaps that you have is going to be important. So I can see Reggie Steele working for some people if they've already taken their flyer, or if the flyer's still open, they might just vouch for Skarmory instead, because it does have better matchups against more of the common threats this meta and not as many checks.
Yeah. VaNNiii, anything extra on Reggie Steele?
Yeah, I think Reggie Steele is a really good pick. We saw that in season 1 and 2 of GBL, but the problem is in this open meta, with a lot of GBL picks still open, like Alolan Marowak or Sableye, those are common hard checks to Reggie Steele, and we still have the grounds and the water typing. So yeah, Reggie Steele is a really good pick, but it's not like a top tier meta pick. For example, in Steel we have Skarmory, so Skarmory should be the best option in Steel.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's going to be also important how and with what Pokemon you're going to pair your Reggie Steele with, because it does have a lot of hard losses, so you will need a lot of hard checks to support your Reggie Steele. That's it. Anything extra before we...
Well, I guess I just think that Regirock is probably going to be the little more versatile of a Reggie to use in this. Like, I know that Reggie Steele is better against a lot of the fairy types and grass types, for example, but they will both lose to ground types, water types, and then but the Regirock has more play against the fire types, which I do like. So it's a little bit more versatile that way. And it also can pick up that Mandibuzz, like you said. So it's a little bit more solid against the flyers as well. So I kind of like that. So as for now, I kind of think Regirock is more solid. But as the other panelists said, it can probably be a good pick in some of the teams, I feel. But for now, just in a vacuum, I kind of prefer Regirock right now.
Yeah, and don't forget the Alolan Marowak.
Yeah, that one as well. Yeah, that one as well.
Yeah. Fair enough. We were going to get to Regirock at some point, but considering you started on Regirock, we can maybe possibly touch up on Regirock already before we get back to Mandibuzz. Let's talk about, let's say, Regirock. In the essence that, yes, it has better flyer matchups, but you do end up losing some important matchups, like you end up losing the dragon type coverage. You also expose yourself to a grass type weakness, which in essence, let's say, Reggie Steele can do. Why would you go a little bit towards Regirock? Just because it can cover fire types? Is that the only reason? Or also, that said, Regirock can do well against the fairies. Against Charmers and the fairy types, but not as well as how Reggie Steele would do. So, which one would you pick if given the opportunity? I know that Tati is sitting on Regirock. Would anybody else here pick Regirock over Reggie Steele? Azaray?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm not running Cresselia, I'll probably run Regirock because we're forgetting that the Stone Edge is slightly cheaper than the Flash Cannon, so it's going to get that Stone Edge in 11 turns, which will be very fast. And actually, that picks up a lot of neutral matchups. I believe
Mm-hmm.
in the Zero Shields, it wins like 70-75% of the meta. I'm not sure. So I might be pulling that out of my ass, but I think I might be remembering it wrong, but it's very, very, very solid. I believe the Focus Blast does like 95% to Vigoroth, which if you switch the Regirock in, I think most people will, if they don't have a grass or a water type, they will switch in the Vigoroth. So it is extremely deadly how fast those can get. I think it even picks up things like Jellicent, and like we were talking about Alola Marowak, I think even with a 2-shield disadvantage, it can still pick up the Marowak, which is quite insane.
Yeah. So if you don't have, basically what Azaray is saying is, if you don't have fire coverage and you want some a closer, you would go Regirock. If you have fire coverage and you want a closer, you go Reggie Steele. Kind of, sort of, right? Or you pick Cresselia and be happy.
Yes, Cresselia will do everything for you.
VaNNiii, any comments on Regirock versus Reggie Steele?
To be honest, I haven't tried Regirock yet. I battled against a Regirock yesterday, but I'm kind of running a lot of hard counters, so it didn't do that much. But the thing is, the moveset is really strong, it's quite spammy, and that important things that the fire coverage and the Alola Marowak win are probably the most important things in this open meta. So yeah, probably Regirock is going to be in a lot of teams, and probably more than Reggie Steele.
Yeah. Because I have been talking with some people too, and they also think Regirock is the better Reggie. Anybody else who wants to change the collective mind here? I think it's Jurunja that's left.
Yeah. So for Regirock, you do have the 1-shield bait, where you can flip the Vigoroth matchup, which is huge because, as we mentioned earlier, Vigoroth's going to be on a lot of teams. And at the same time, you do still have checks to Skarmory, you still have checks to Ice types, and you still have checks to Flyers. It beats out Mandibuzz as well. You can beat Wigglytuff depending on IV spreads. So you still have a lot of solid checks with Regirock, and it can be really deadly in the closing if you do not have hard counters left alive for it.
Yeah. So we can all agree the Reggie that wins in this meta is the Regirock. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a Regirock, find somebody who does. Follow them to the ends of the earth and trade it from them.
I'm pretty sure they're a finite resource now because you can only use the level 15 research ones that were out back in 2018, I believe. Yes. I was lucky to keep mine, and it's not even mine. It was just some guy, a friend of mine. He's like, "Oh, this is from 2018. You want to go for long,
lucky trade,
2-year lucky trade, maybe?" So I have a lucky Regirock that I've only kept because it's like, okay, I'll just keep one of everything. So lucky I didn't throw that away. So I might.
Yeah. It's the same for me. I have one left, and I trashed everything else that I had. So that's the one that I'm going to power up. And I think it's going to be really interesting if you're trapped in a mirror. You're just going to have to pray which one is the worst. All right. Now that we covered the Battle of the Reggies, it's another Pokemon that's been showing up. At least that really showed up during the All-Stars tournament, and that's Mandibuzz. People call it the Flying Umbreon, which it is, but loses the Umbreon. What are the bonus points that you see if you want to run Mandibuzz? Because it does take that very crucial flying typing off your team. Tati.
I think it's just like you said there. It's just a tank. It can do very well in a lot of neutral matchups, and it also gives that all ever important the ghost coverage as well, which you kind of need in this meta. For example, against Sableye and a lot of Marowaks and stuff. So it does very well there. And and as we also said previously, if someone runs Reggie Steele, it's actually pretty amazing that the Mandibuzz can pick up the Reggie Steele matchup as well. And it's just a tank. It can do very well in a lot of neutral matchups, and it gives that ghost coverage. I think those are pretty good points already to consider Mandibuzz on your team. And it also can beat the grass very, very well, like you would want that flying type of yours to beat.
Exactly. And I think Mandibuzz, as I think it's been consistently pointed out, this cup is going to be a cup of safe swaps and neutral matchups, and Mandibuzz is going to be a safe swap and will have quite a bit of neutral matchups only because of its bulk. I mean, it will not do neutral damage, but its bulk is going to pull you through in a lot of the zero shield scenarios. And you can have a lot of coverage movesets. You can go Aerialace Shadow Ball. You can go Foul Play Shadow Ball, Foul Play Aerialace. Depending on what your team's weakness is, you can always tailor make moves to cover. And if you don't have charge TMs, time to grind. Only real weaknesses that Mandibuzz has is hard counters are going to be like Fairy, Ice, and Electric types. And it's going to hit Electric types for neutral. It can also hit Fairy types for neutral, and it can hit Ice types for neutral damage. So that's where the bulk of Mandibuzz is going to really shine. Any reason why you guys would consider running Mandibuzz and you guys would think, okay, I really don't need this in your team? This time I'm gonna give it to Jurunja first.
All right, so the reason I might run Mandibuzz, like we saw in the All-Stars when the floating city meta was around, is because Mandibuzz is quite the tank. It can do a lot of hits. Bird was built to just absorb damage and just to play out neutral matchups well. But at the same time, you do lose two typings when you pick Mandibuzz. You lose your dark typing, so you can potentially lose the Wireless, which does, as we mentioned, cover the water, grass, fire core pretty well. And you also lose your flyer type, so that means you can no longer pick Skarmory either. So if I were to run Mandibuzz, that means I'm not going to run Zweilous, I'm not going to run Skarmory. And I'm not going to run Drifblim as a potential hard wall to all the Vigoroths that are probably going to be around. So likely not going to run Mandibuzz because I don't have one built as well. But at the same time, it does pick up a lot of good matchups with ghost types, water types, fire types. And it does dish out a lot of damage to the things that do beat it. So that way, it's not as hard of a loss.
Exactly. And especially like if you look at the types it loses to, it's going to be a very close loss, and you can have a Pokemon like Vigoroth come in and ramp up energy of it.
Right.
And VaNNiii, what do you think about Mandibuzz?
Well, as you saw in the All-Star, I think I ran Mandibuzz in every 3 rounds, so I'm a big fan of Mandibuzz, okay? But it's really good, it's really solid. One more positive thing I can say about Mandibuzz is that you can reset your clock going into spamming fall plays or something. But the problem is that this meta is going to have a lot of ice or fairies, kind of a lot of Ninetales, for example. So that may be difficult to handle. But overall, it's a really strong pick. You can combine Mandibuzz, for example, with Reggie Steele. Okay, for me, it's kind of his best teammate.
I think that was mostly covered, but I just want to reiterate that I feel Mandibuzz takes up too much important typings. Like the flying typing is extremely important, and the dark typing is also extremely important for this meta. And I feel if you use both of those types just for one Pokemon, you're going to be putting yourself in a lot of RPS situations where you need maybe that dark typing in a separate mon, or vice versa with the flying typing. So I feel those are very premium typings, and I personally don't think it's worth it. But at the end of the day, it's how you build your team and how you cover your weaknesses. Also, I don't have Mandibuzz, so I'm just kind of talking about it anyway, so.
It's okay. I'm sure you're going to be on Maddie's YouTube video talking shit about something anyways. Was your pick Credile?
Yeah, it was. You'll see.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Last Pokemon that we're going to discuss about, the very last one, and I think it's a favorite of one of our professors, Plein Lejeune, is the Shadow Politoed with a Legacy Earth.
Abby, just before you are going to cover this beauty, the chat is asking the opinion of the panel on which Dark Mon then to run during this cup, if it's then Morse Veilus or a Sableye or another pick that you have in mind.
Whew, that is pretty difficult. Personally, if given the choice, I would run Zweilous for my dark type. There are other options like the A-Rat, Alolan Raticate is also pretty decent, but it picks up the normal typing. I would, if given the opportunity to run either Mandibuzz or Zweilous, I would run Zweilous, mostly because I definitely want to have a Skarmory in my team, and I'm not willing to give up the flying typing for Mandibuzz. Anybody else who would consider running Mandibuzz as your dark type?
Well, I don't think anyone mentioned it, but someone mentioned Sableye, and I would absolutely run that. I feel like I mentioned before, a lot of the top rankings are very weak to fighting, like Reggie Steele, Regirock, the normal types, Zweilous, they're all weak to fighting, and Vigoroth's going to be very common. So I feel if you take all these best Pokemon, you're like, well, one of these Pokemon is going to lose to Vigoroth, and I feel if your team is very weak to fighting types, or rather counter users, I think Sableye is a very good choice. It pretty much only hard loses to Charmers, and I feel like we said before, of the Alolan Ninetales being probably the most common Charmer, the most common Fairy type, I feel it will probably be running more Powder Snow than Charm. So I think the Sableye is going to be a very, very safe switch. If you land that return, at the very least, you're going to take a shield, or you're going to essentially, win back switch if it goes unshielded. So I think Sableye is a very, very solid safe switch that, is very, very neutral against a lot of things.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I think it's also going to come down to comfort, because I think people know and have played Sableye since forever.
Mm-hmm.
Any other options, guys? Which dark type would you guys, would the rest of you think would use? I guess Vadi would definitely want to use a Mandibuzz.
No, I'm actually running Zweilous. Yeah, because I think it covers a lot of things, and it gives you the Dragon Breath Pressure, which is kind of the best fast move of the game in terms of damage and energy, to be honest. So yeah, Zweilous is really good for me. I don't discard Mandibuzz. I may try Mandibuzz in another team comp, but for now I'm running Zweilous.
Because I can also think that the Dragon type is pretty good with Zweilous as well, because there are probably going to be a lot of these, like I thought we mentioned this already, but there's probably going to be a lot of these water grass fire trios and those monsters, and also electric types, and Dragon resists all of them. So that's a pretty nice trait to have. And also, yeah, like VaNNiii said, the Dragon Breath OP. So
and somebody go on, finish.
Yeah, Zweilous good. Zweilous good.
Yeah, and as somebody who has been playing Double Dragon since forever in Ultra League, I definitely think Dragon Breath is OP. Jurunja, what would you pick?
So I'm currently running Zweilous on my set that I've toyed around with for a few hours on PvP Poke, just because Dragon Breath is OP, you just spam things down. So if you do need fast damage output on a lot of things that are neutral, Zweilous is your answer. But if I'm not running Zweilous, then most likely it's going to be Sableye just to have another check to all the Vigoroths that are going to be running around, to have a check to the Drifloon safe swaps for Vigoroth, to have a check for basically everything else, just because you're not going to have a Charmer on the team, or it's highly unlikely you're going to have a Charmer on the team if the person is running Alolan Ninetales. So you're pretty much free to run with Sableye as a safe swap if you see an Alolan Ninetales, just because 9 out of 10 times they're not going to have Charm.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, there you go. Basically, it's a tie between Sableye and Zweilous, if you ask me. Last Pokemon, Shadow Politoed. I think it would be unfair if I don't let Splain Lejeune start off. Of course, he's not part of the panel, but he kind of loves this mon, so I'm going to let him have a little bit of a chat about this mon.
Yeah, sure.
First, he has to unmute his mic.
Yeah, sure. I really like Politoed, and there is something that we can say about this cup is that I think that mons that are monotypes that can have like several functions are really interesting mons, because maybe after we can talk, for example, about Rainy Cast Form that I think is a very great pick, because with the Thunder, he has the coverage. It's a bit the same here with Politoed, because you can run it with Earthquake or with Blizzard, allowing you to pick up, let's say, to have a nice coverage. And the main difference you have with Politoed, it's that, let's say, you are a bit less weak to grass type, because even if it's a pseudo mud buy with Mudshot, energy generation, and weather ball spam, you are only 2 times weak to grass, whereas like the normal mud boys, like for example a Whiscash that is as well a very spammy mom, are 4 times weak to grass. I think really Politoed is an underestimated mon, because you can play really around a lot of matchups. For example, if you know how to time perfectly your charge moves, you can give a rough time to some of his hardest checked, like for example a Galvantula, that you can at least force them to shield. You can beat the Skarmory if you know how to play the matchup. So I really think it's you know me, I'm definitely going to bring it, but I think it's going to be a very interesting month for this meta.
All right, you heard it here first. If you guys are going to be in a tournament where you're going to have Spleen, just bring 3 counters to Politoed.
I didn't know Politoed could be Shadow. I can't remember seeing a Shadow Poliwag, or maybe I'm just really unlucky.
Mine is Shadow Azaray.
Yeah, and I think it was a very brief window where it was available, and unfortunately I trashed all of mine, because at that point I was like, this is not going to be a useful mon, is it? Because I like Poliwrath, but I like the bulk of Poliwrath that gets you through the matchups. I never expected Politoed to do well, ever, unfortunately. So, Tati, what do you think? Shadow Politoed. It's basically...
So what we learned right now is to save absolutely everything. That's the main lesson here. Save absolutely everything. Yeah, about Politoed. Yeah, amazing. Amazing, really spammy. Can advance that switch clock maybe. In some of the situations, you can also run. You can run Earthquake. You can run Blizzard, whatever you like. Like you do you want a more solid coverage against mons that are on the ground basically and don't fly, or do you want maybe some coverage against flyers and grass? That's just gonna be your pick based on your team comp. And that Politoed is really nice in that like a pure water type also checks that Diggersby Xl and Ninetales core that I talked about previously very, very well. So it does good there. I'm not super familiar with the how's the comparison between the normal one and the shadow one. So that's one I should take a look at, but I have not yet. And I feel it's gonna be in a lot of teams. It can also cover all those AWACs very, very well. Very neutral matchup against the Vigoroth, and they're basically quite neutral against a lot of stuff that take neutral damage from Weather Ball, because it's a really good DPE move and really spammy. So yeah, expect to see a lot of that thing.
Yeah. One of the problems Politoed has is that it loses to quite a bit of the meta, but it doesn't lose by much. And that is something that is going to be really important. I think even against Alolan Marowak, Shadow Bone in the Zero Shields will hurt, even though you can threaten it. But I think personally, Politoed is going to be a really, really good spam machine. I think that is going to be its function. It's going to be basically spam people and make them play the guessing game. I ran Politoed in GBL with Blizzard. All I had to do is swap in my Politoed into an Azu, and they think it's running Earthquake. They swap in their Tropius or a Grass Tap, and I Blizzard them, and they just quit. And that was something that I kept consistently doing, and I found consistent success with, because when you swap in a Politoed into an Azu, they think, oh yeah, Earthquake, that's why you swapped it in. But no. Yeah, I really love this mon. I've started using it. Unfortunately, I do not have the shadow version, but it is already a very, very bulky mon. It does not look the part, but it is very, very bulky. You would be surprised how bulky a Politoed is. So it is recommended to go for the shadow version, because the shadow is still going to be pretty bulky. Any reasons? We have seen quite a bit of reasons why you want to run a Politoed. Any reasons why you would not want to run a Politoed? Jurunja, what do you think?
So the reason why you may not want to run Politoed is the existence of Jellicent. So Jellicent is going to be a very unique ghost type in this meta, where you can cover a lot of your weaknesses with the Shadow Ball threat, and you can reduce the damage output of things that switch into it with Bubble. So when you do switch in after you faint out, you're able to farm up a lot more and then shift your shield advantage around, just because you have a lot of energy loaded and you're ready to just fire off on the next one that comes in. So that may be a reason why you may not want to run Politoed.
Yeah, definitely. That is a very, very good reason. And that said, would you rather run Bubble Beam or Icy Wind on the Jellicent? Just to give you a grass coverage, it essentially does the same function of debuffing. And probably Icy Wind gives you a little bit more coverage. It is something that we have to probably look at when we finally finish, when we finally have Jellicent for, let's say, the last spot, and we have to see what our team needs the most, I guess.
Does it know Icy Wind and Ice Beam? Because I thought it was just Ice Beam.
No, it's only Ice Beam. It's just Ice Beam.
Yeah, really? It doesn't know Ice Beam? Oops. I think I
Nope.
did it then. Oops. All right, yeah, okay. I kind of flunked that moveset. All right. Any other reasons, VaNNiii? Would you run a Politoed Shadow if you had one?
Well, I'm actually running the normal one, so no, I don't have the shadow one. That's unlucky. But yeah, the normal one is really spammy. It's a monster. But the reason I wouldn't run Politoed after trying it is that you can't, I mean, it's not like kill pressure or kill potential. You need to spam a lot of weather balls, and you can get hard wall by, for example, a Grass or a Pelipper. And even every flying type can safe switch into Politoed and not like out spam you, but can kill you, because you need to land a lot of weather balls, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, that is a valid reason. And if at least I'm not going to ask this question. If Tari is going to pick a water type, he's going to probably pick a Pelipper. So So that is not a question. All right, guys. It's been fun discussing, let's say, some of the top mons. We are now going to give you some tournaments that were completed, and it was all sweep wins. So we have picked out 5 games from these tournaments where you can firsthand look at some of the best teams that are out there, and how the person who won these tournaments built his team.